Hey guys,
Hey,
I'm Suraj,
and I'm Ori.
and we're going to give you a quick seminar on how to best prepare for CIS 2750.
Okay, so let's get started. Okay, so 2750 is a course whose structure is laid out between the midterms and the assignment, the assessments, which are your midterms, and your final, and your assignments 50-50. So your assignments are worth 50% of your final grade, and then your midterms and your finals combined are also worth 50% of your final grade.
And you have to pass both your assignments and your assessments, so your finals and your midterms, to pass the course.
Exactly. So this course is most likely going to be your first introductory course in full stack development. What that means is you'll be going from start of a product, so the back end or your APIs there, all the way to your front end, starting with your first two assignments being parsing and things like that, adding on to a front end, a UI, and then last but not least, a database. So that's the breakdown. This kind of course will punish you for bad programming style. So it's our tip that you start early and that you design as you go, that you make it a requirement for yourself to take your time to program well and to not rush through parts of it.
Yeah, because if you make mistakes in your early assignments, all these assignments build off of one another, so you're going to go and have to fix those mistakes you made in like assignments 1 and 2 to make assignments 3 and 4 work.
Yeah. So this course itself is a 0.75 course, and what that means is most of your courses in CIS are 0.5. However much time you spent on that course, say, I don't know, 15 hours a week, expect that with a 0.75 course, you'll spend a little bit more. You'll spend that 20 hours a week on that course. So budget your time accordingly. With a course like 2750, it's all about starting early. It's all about giving it time. This course is more so time management than anything else.
It also has a somewhat unforgiving grading system, and the first two assignments will most likely be using an autograder, but the prof will go over this in more detail once you actually start the course.
Mm-hmm. And moreover, on what Suraj was saying was that you really need to hone down on making sure and to perfect your assignments, because they all build on top of one another. So your first parsing assignment or your first backend or API assignment will be used in your second assignment. And what you've done in your first two assignments will be used in the third and the fourth and so on. So making sure that what you are making, that what you're designing is meant to last is very important.
And this course isn't designed to make you fail. It's designed to make you a better programmer. And you're going to need to learn how to write really good code that's modular and you can change if you need to in the future. Now, some topics.
Yeah, so most of the course is based in C. More so, I'd like to say advanced C. It's not your run-of-the-mill C operation or function-based. A lot of it has to do with using data structures and perfecting the language C. So knowing it really well is only a benefit. After you do your C assignments, the rest of it is JavaScript oriented, and then backend will be relational databases, most likely MySQL. All these contents will be enforced in the actual lectures and in the course itself. So don't be too afraid if your C is not what you'd like it to be. You always have time to make it better. That's what this break is for. Your JavaScript or your scripting languages will be taught in class. So there isn't an expectation that you know it already, since it hasn't been taught in earlier classes. And on that note, with C, it is expected that what you've learned in the past is something you already know. So although it will be covered a little bit, most of the material is relatively new topics. And then with your databases as well, non-relational, relational databases, they will be teaching that in the content. And that's what your midterm will be based on in your final.
It also really heavily relies on debugging and testing. So you're going to have to, you're going to debug a lot of code, your own code, and you also are going to be testing it a lot. So as you go along, as you develop, make sure you test as you go.
And we'll be talking about this a little bit further into the seminar, but a lot of the words you'll hear us saying is some things along the lines of test-driven development or forward-thinking design. A lot of these things are very important in this course. Make sure you test early and you test often.
Yeah, this course also uses SQL and database connectivity. So that's an assignment 4, where you'll connect all your backend and your GUI to an actual database to create a functioning program. But don't worry about that too much if you don't have any experience. They go over it pretty in depth in the course.
And if you're one of those type of people who prefers to learn on their own and not much of a lecture person, show up to those lectures. They're very important. They will teach you things and they'll cover content that might be important for your assignments and your midterms. But if you just like that extra mile there of understanding and knowing that language or the database systems more, then take a course over the summer, or take a course over your break right now. Take on some tutorials, learn some new things. They'll only help you.
Yep. It also goes over software standards, and the prof will touch on this, but it's just why they're important and why they're used commonly in the work environment.
Yeah.
So next are learning outcomes. So we're just going to go over the learning outcomes for this course. The first one,
and these were taken straight from the outline of the course itself. Yeah. So
the first one is practice effective strategies for learning to use new software frameworks, methodologies, and programming languages. So this is just using new things like JavaScript, SQL, new things that you haven't encountered before. And a lot of this course is learning by yourself and independent learning. There's still help available, but you really got to be a good self-learner. Next is to construct software components that adhere to provided specifications. So this refers to the fact that the entire project, all 4 assignments are based on one sort of file format, and you'll be given a specification that's maybe 40 or 50 pages long that you're going to have to read and understand and then go and develop. That seems a little daunting, but like once you get into it, it becomes a little bit easier.
And I'd like to make a note of that, is that these documents will be big. They will be given to you very early on, though. So the expectation is for you to read them. And the expectation is for you to know them forward and back and to really understand how they work, because all your assignments are based off these specifications. Your second, your third assignment will be based off knowing the same specifications that were in your first assignment with more added on. So when you get that 60-page document for your first assignment, very highly recommend to read it through. I know that when I was doing this course, I made the mistake of assuming, you know what, I read through it, I skimmed through it. Seems okay. I understand it. It's not that difficult to understand. And I didn't go into the nitty-gritty. And I think that was my biggest mistake, was kind of skipping over it, skimming it, and moving on, and not going back to it. And this really hurt me, because when I was doing that first assignment, there were a lot of steps and a lot of small details that I missed that ended up making my code a little bit more unreadable, making it into kind of a spaghetti code, as you'd call, and making things very difficult to debug and to test. So when it comes to these assignments, very important that you read through it. Take a piece of paper, jot down notes as you go, really understand your specifications before you get started on the assignment.
Yeah.
And that leads into design, right? When you're reading the specifications, start thinking about how you're going to design what it is you need to build.
Yeah, exactly. So the third learning outcome is to integrate software components written in different programming languages to create a software system. And what this basically means is your assignments are going to be written in different languages, so C, JavaScript, and SQL most likely. And you're going to have to make them sort of interact and communicate and work together, and to create a bigger sort of software system. And that's new, and you haven't done that in your other courses.
No, don't get me wrong. What you've done in 2500 or 2520, although those are relatively big, can be big software applications, this is where we take it to the next level. This is where we integrate pieces from different languages and from different architectures, and we, in a way, orchestrate it to work for a specific purpose. So imagine taking your assignments from 2500 and 2520 and mixing and matching them all together to do one big thing. That's kind of like what 2750 is like.
Yeah, exactly. So next, you got to design and implement software libraries. So the prof will go over this in more detail, but it just refers to dynamic and static libraries. Don't stress about that too much. Next is demonstrate systemic quality assurance and software testing techniques. So you want to make sure the code you write is up to standards. It meets all the specifications and it's well tested and it does what it's supposed to do. And that means it's high quality software. That's what they're really aiming. That's what they really want you to do with this course.
You know, I heard a stat today that a programmer's time is spent about 70% designing and 30% coding. And that's funny, right? Because everything we're learning is coding right now, right? But when it comes to these kind of big assignments, it's very important to think ahead. It's very important to design more so than you actually code. I think that most of your time in this course, you should be spending designing and you should be spending coding it.
Employee database or file-based backend to implement data storage for interactive programs. So this refers to assignment 4. We're just going to be developing a backend to connect your GUI and your C code, as I mentioned before. And finally, identify and apply appropriate human-computer interaction techniques to the design of a GUI. So that just means developing a good GUI that's user-friendly and that's easy to use. So next, what should you know to succeed?
Well, specifically in assignment 1 and 2, and we already talked about this, but we're going to keep repeating it because it just needs to be said, is for assignment 1 and 2, you'll be writing the backend. You'll be writing what I like to call the skeleton off of which all your assignments will be based on. This basically means you'll be writing all those APIs, you'll be writing all that backend stuff. All those frameworks, the methodologies, everything that you've learned in 2520 and 2500 will be used in the first 2 assignments. So it's really important to learn how to write good C code. Take your time now to go over all the things you learned in 2520 and 2500, your pointers, your data structures, all these important things. Linked lists are probably one of the bigger things, and this is one of the bigger methodologies that you'll use or data structure that you'll use in the first 2 assignments. That doesn't mean you have to use only linked list. There's a time and a place for every data structure, and with these big assignments, a lot of it comes down to performance. So if you think your program will perform better with a hash table or with a linked list, it's up to you, right? Unless there's a specification that says specifically to use a linked list, you shouldn't be bogged down to just doing that. Use whatever you think will work best for your software. I know that when I was writing the first one, I ended up implementing a hash table for mine or a hash map for mine to be more efficient with the data that I was getting. And it ended up making my assignment a little bit faster. When the TA is going to mark that assignment or the audit grader is marking that assignment, it's only giving you a set limit of time to run your application. Given an input, how long will it take you to get that output? And it may sound silly because, all the assignments we've been building up until now, they've been running pretty fast, but some of these things can take a long time to compile or to build or even to run with specific input. So expect that they'll be giving large amounts of input, not small, because what you will have to test your own stuff, you'll have small sets of tests. They'll be using really big tests to test these assignments.
Yeah. You're going to be testing edge cases too, so try to get as much of that as you can covered.
And that's where design comes into play in your testing as well, is alongside while you're developing your program, make sure to give time to incrementally test your software. Build the framework for what your assignment will be based on, and then slowly incrementally add to it. And as you add to it, test these stubs, test these software components. And I'm sure you've learned these topics in 2500 and 2520, but it might not have been enforced. If it's not enforced in your class, enforce it on yourself. These are very important. These edge cases are what make or break you a lot of the time.
And if you want more practice with C, go to lynda.com. I have a link for that in the description. Yeah. It's a great resource that's available to you for free through the University of Guelph.
All undergraduate students have access to Lynda.
Yeah, and use it. It's a great resource if you just want more practice or you want to learn it again. It's something I've used to learn different languages and stuff, and I found it's one of the best resources out there. So again, that's in the description.
I used it. I remember I had 2750 last winter, and over the Christmas break, I took a JavaScript MySQL course on there. It took me a weekend and a little bit more maybe, and I just honed down on learning these skills. And when I ended up in these assignments, it came naturally to me, and it made things a little bit easier. And even now, when I'm on co-op or when I'm in the workforce or when I'm doing other assignments, a lot of these courses that you can take on there can really help, can really give you that little step towards success.
Exactly. So you should also know your data structures very, very well, especially linked lists and hash and maybe hash maps, because you're going to be using them a lot in this course, especially in the back end.
Mm-hmm. We talked about this. They're very important. Make sure that, I don't know how enforced this was when you took 2520. When I took it, it wasn't as much enforced, but if you had any seg faults or any memory problems when you were doing your data structures, really make sure that there aren't any now, because you will be heavily penalized for having any sorts of memory leaks on there. And if they're not caught in the first assignment or the second assignment, believe me, by the end, by the fourth assignment, they will be caught. So make sure that as early as you can get rid of them, that you take care of them.
Yep. Also, with your C pointers, you should know how pointers work coming into this course, because you're going to be using like double, triple pointers from the very first assignment. And if you don't know what they're used for, you should take the time to learn it right now.
You utilize what you've learned in 2500 with function pointers. That will also come in handy, right? Review all the material that you've learned so far. It's important.
So with testing is also extremely, extremely important in this course. And you want to make sure you test thoroughly and test regularly. Testing is going to make sure you meet all the requirements. It's also going to be tested using a automatic test harness, yes. So this sort of helps you understand what they're going to be looking for. So when you code, you know what you need to be coding. One approach many students like to take is test-driven development, TDD. And what this is you write the test first. That way you fail it. Then you write code in order to pass that test. And this sort of helps you understand what exactly you need to be coding for, right? Rather than just blindly just coding.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to mention IFS?
We'll talk about that in a little bit.
Okay.
So also GDB, if you aren't aware, GDB is a GNU debugger tool, and you might find it helpful to learn and use. This is optional, and there's other useful ways to do it. But we have links in the description for you to learn that by yourself. It can be really useful, so take a look at it, see if you like it, and yeah.
I found that a lot of people tend to use IDE debuggers, and I did that. I don't know about you, but I used IDE debuggers, even though the professor mentioned in his course, use GDB. And I understand why he kept mentioning just GDB, never mentioned IDE debuggers. And I began to understand this later on in the course that, and I'm sure you guys understand this now for some things, is when you code on your operating system that's not Linux, if you're not using Linux, say Windows or Mac, and you're using an IDE on there and you're using a debugger on there, there are some issues that you will find in Linux won't show up on your Windows, and vice versa. So that's why it's also important to test on the servers, right before you submit. And we'll talk about that, but that's where GDB comes in hand. Is sometimes you'll run into these weird, funky errors on Windows or the opposite way around on Linux, and the only way to debug those is using GDB. So important to learn that as well.
So next is memory. This is one of the most difficult parts of the course, and that's managing your memory usage. You're going to be mallocating and freeing a lot, and you're going to have thousands of lines of code, and it's important that you don't have any memory leaks, because you will get penalized. In addition, you don't want to be in a professional work environment and have your code have memory leaks, because that shows a lack of professionalism, and generally it's not a good product if it's leaking memory. I believe this is the first course that really forces you to not have any memory leaks, So it takes it's a bit of a learning curve, but a really useful tool to help you manage your memory is Valgrind. We included links in the description for this to help you learn it, but Valgrind is an essential tool, and make sure you works and can use it before the course starts, and make sure you test your memory continuously. So don't wait till the day before the assignments due. Run Valgrind on your program, because you're going to have like 1,000 memory leaks, and that takes a long time to figure out where you're going wrong. If you test it at the very beginning of your program and like incrementally as you develop, you can detect those memory leaks immediately, and that way you don't have to scour through 1,000 lines of code trying to find out where you're leaking memory.
Yeah, and that's where these tests come in handy too, is testing as you go, and using Valgrind to test is that you'll find these in these edge cases whether or not you're leaking memory as well, right? And I noticed that, and I'm sure you guys noticed this too, we put Valgrind there at the top of the description, and there's a reason for that. It's the top there because it's one of the most important parts for succeeding in this course. The penalty for memory leaks can be very harsh. While you might, like, I know that I ran into this, is that I had, I don't know, about 100 memory leaks in mine because I didn't test until halfway through. And I got rid of most of them. I think I had 2 or 3 left in there. And I said to myself, they won't find those. Those are extreme edge cases. And I got away with it on my first assignment. But when it came to my my second assignment, I got away with it. But when it came to my third assignment or my fourth assignment, there's no escaping it. They're going to catch it. And when they do, it'll be even worse. So, because it'll just all compound to your final assignment.
Yeah, exactly. So memory is super, super important in this course. Next is IFS. This is a really cool tool that was just recently introduced.
Yeah, it was built here by professors here and then some students here at the University of Guelph.
Yeah, and what it basically is, it's a compliance checker for the test harness. So the test harness has very specific things you need to have in order to run. For example, if you misnamed a folder, it's not going to run on the test harness. If you have an extra include that you're not supposed to do, it might not run on the test harness.
Or if you miss your stubs, right? Like sometimes you might not have all the time to finish every important piece of the software that you're building, and you might be going for the small little points, which we recommend to do is if you're having trouble with the big things, do the small things, get those extra marks. Don't just give up on the big ones and pretend you're not, and just not do it, right? Do the small things. But then what the issue you'll have is when the test harness goes ahead and tries to run these things, if you're missing any of those function calls, it'll fail. So stubs are important to build as well. Yeah, so IFS will just tell you if your program is compliant with the test harness. That can save you from getting a 0 on the first or second assignment. I know the first time I took this course last winter, we didn't really have IFS. I got a 0 on the first assignment just because I misnamed the folder. And even though I shouldn't have, that was like my mark. But now the prof will go over this in more detail, like how to use it, links for it. But it's going to tell you immediately if you can run it or not. That way you won't have to risk getting a 0. Mm-hmm. With all these tools in place, there's a benefit, but there's also a cost. And the cost being is if you don't end up using these tools, they won't be very forgiving if you lose marks for not using them, right? So make sure you use them. Take their advice. Use these tools that were built specifically for these courses, for these types of software to make sure that you succeed.
Yeah. So now for some tips for doing well.
So we spoke about this. Read the assignments well ahead of time. You'll usually get the assignment outline and a description and the specs incrementally. And when you do, they'll be well in advance. I remember we got our specs 2-3 weeks before we had to submit the assignment. So we had all the time in the world to read those specs, to take down notes, to understand what the software is doing, and to ask questions early. I remember when I took the course, we had a little Q&A at the end of every class to ask questions about the specs as we went before we began. So utilize that. It's very important. Yeah. And on top of that is if you understand the specs and you have the assignment outline and you know what it is you need to do, don't wait until the week before. Start it. Start it early. This course, as I said in the beginning, Most of it is about time management. If you can manage your time well, you will succeed.
Yeah, and something you might find is you might think that a certain code segment might take you a couple hours, so you leave it till the very end. But what's going to happen is you might encounter bugs and stuff that'll take you 5, 7, 8, 10 hours to complete. And just starting that early gives you that extra cushion to sort of help you fix and resolve those issues.
Another note is that there's a lot of TAs for this course, and they have labs all the time. And one of the biggest feedback that the professors and the TAs are giving to the professor is getting is that the labs are very underutilized. There's not many people showing up to these labs. And it's very easy to see this in the marks and in the mistakes that students make. A lot of times you'll have questions about the specs, or you'll have questions about the assignment, or uncertainties. There's no room for uncertainties with the test harness. It's either it'll work or it'll fail. So a lot of these questions can be answered in the labs, can be answered by the TAs, and they have the capability to help you guys succeed. So really utilize those labs. They're running all the time, and there's a lot of them. So find one that works in your schedule and go in there. Even if you don't have any questions, go in there, sit down, do some work. You might encounter one. You might overhear someone talking to someone else about a problem you haven't even faced yet, or you haven't even thought of yet. And it might only give you an aha moment. I need to add this to my design. Let's go back to my design and rework it a little bit so that'll fit in there as well.
Yeah. And even in the first week, if you're confused about the spec and you have any questions, they're more than happy to help you. There's also the forums, which the TAs and the professor monitor. So if you ever, if a lab isn't anytime closed, you can just post a question there and everyone can see it.
Another one is submitting all your assignments. You might find this a little bit funny, but there have been cases of students not submitting their assignments because they didn't do the bigger things. They did the smaller things, but they didn't think they'd get the marks for them, so they just didn't submit. They took the 0. We're saying is even if you didn't complete your assignment or didn't do a large portion of it, still submit. Give yourself that chance to gain some of those marks, because down the road you'll still have to do that assignment in order to do the next one, but at least you get some marks for the time you spent. And on top of that is, once you've submitted, download your submission, open your submission, make sure it's properly organized in the exact layout that they asked for. If they asked for everything to be in one specific named folder within specific folders, do it exactly how they ask, because the TAs will drag and drop it into the test harness and run it. And if it doesn't run, right, they have a lot of students to mark in a very short period of time. So submit all your assignments, download these assignments, review them, maybe run them against the compliance checker. Once you've submitted them, download it and run it exactly how you submitted it against the compliance checker. Just verify that your assignments are good. There's no need to lose these silly marks.
Yep. And if you have any issues or you are failing, go see the prof early. He or she may be able to help you. If you go right before the drop date, they can't really do anything, but go early, go talk to them. They want to see you succeed. They want to see you pass, and just go talk to them early if you are having those issues.
I feel like this course gets a stigma to be like one of the hardest courses in this university. Yeah. And it's a difficult course. We're not saying it isn't. It's important that you take the time to focus on this course to make sure you succeed. But there's so much help being given in these courses, and the profs are there to help you. They're there to help you succeed. They might have had some influence in writing these outlines for these courses, but they're there to make sure that you do well and that you succeed and that you can move forward in your degree, so that they can see you in their future classes.
So now for some common pitfalls in this course. The biggest one is starting late and not having enough time to finish the assignment. There's a lot of work you need to do. It's going to take you a lot of time. Like I spent probably at least 30 or 40 hours just coding, because there's so much code you need to write, so much you need to debug, and you need that time to do that.
Yeah, I've had friends where they left the assignment till a week before or a week and a half before, and they'd end up spending that entire week at the library. They wouldn't have the time to go to their other classes. They'd have to spend from the morning till late at night just sitting there, the overnighters, the amount of work that they had to do last minute. It's not worth it. Not for your well-being, not for your health. Start early. Even if you know what, even if you take the time to write milestones, write goals. Today, I want to finish this part. By the end of the week, I want this done. And then slowly start working towards achieving those goals. That's the best way to start early and make sure you finish well ahead of time. It's always nice to have a little bit of a buffer from the time you finish the assignment to the time you submit the assignment to work out any small kinks that you still have left.
Yeah, even doing a little bit every day really, really adds up towards the end, and it's going to help you.
The first day you get your assignment is the day you should be starting your design. Don't wait till the week before. Don't wait till a week and a half before. The day you get the assignment is the day you start. Designing. A lot of these assignments have been done in the past. Not specifically these assignments, but the general trend of these assignments have been done in the past. So they know exactly how much time it takes to do these assignments and succeed. They're giving you 2 weeks on the dot because it takes about 2 weeks to do these assignments. They're expecting you to start when the assignment is given.
Yep. Next is checking for memory leaks at the end. Don't do that. Check for memory leaks as you go. Otherwise, you're going to have thousands of memory leaks, and you're going to have to fix them because you'll get penalized for having those errors. Make sure you test on the school Linux servers before you submit. I've included links in the description to help you access the school Linux servers. And again, once you start the course, if you have any trouble, the TAs are more than happy to help you set them up. But make sure you test on the Linux servers because there can be differences between your development environment and the testing environment. Finally, back up your code via GitHub as you code. Don't email yourself version numbers.
You emailing people out there, stop. You need to stop. No version control in email. Yes. Use a proper version control tool.
Yeah, exactly. And we've included links in the description of how to use Git. In addition, like once you go to apply for jobs and stuff, they might ask you for code you've written. Make sure you have these in private private repositories, and you should have access to that for free through your school email. And if you want to show a potential employer your code, you can give them access to that. Make sure it's private though. You don't want anyone else having access to your SYS 2750 code because
that's academic misconduct, folks. Yeah, don't do that. Private repos.
Yeah.
And on the topic of GitHub, I have a personal story is that I had a friend and she sends everything through email. Everything. Doesn't anymore, used to. And she learned, and I've had friends who've learned the hard way because you send things through email and you end up sending yourself so many emails that you don't know where it came from. You don't know what parts what. Version control using Git is not only in the professional workforce, but should be used when you're in schooling because that way you can commit certain things, revert back, make changes, see what you've changed, and be able to compare them in case anything goes wrong.
Yep, exactly. And like that's happened to me where I'm like, oh, I went in a very bad direction. This doesn't work for my code. Then I have to revert a few different versions back because I made a mistake and I didn't design it very well. And that's okay, that happens, but GitHub just gives you that flexibility to go back and start from not like the very beginning, but a point where your code was still working.
And if you have an issue with GitHub for some reason, there's Bitbucket. Even if you go back to like a decade ago, use something like SVN, Turtoids. It doesn't really matter. Use some of these really old provisioning tools, or sorry, version control tools. Don't email. No, don't do it. I'm sorry. Don't, please. Yeah.
I think that's good.
Yeah. I think we talked a lot about the assignments. I don't think we gave much information about the midterms or the finals.
Yep.
I think that most of people's worry comes from the assignments. And so that's what we spent a lot of time talking about is these assignments. And believe me, we've been repetitive, and we know that we're being repetitive because it's important to make sure you understand these things and that you utilize them when you take this course. But things like your midterms, things like your finals, they'll come from course content. So take notes in class, ask questions in class, be there and learn. And although you might know these topics, it's always nice to get a little bit more information. I know that at first I didn't go to class very much because I felt like I already knew C. And that may be, but these lectures are important to base your knowledge from, and to learn more and to ask questions, to hear what others have to say and what the professor has to say. And this content will be on your midterm, and on your finals.
So we're gonna do a little Q&A now. If you guys have any questions, feel free to message it in the chat and we'll answer them.
Yeah. And so we'll be on here for 5 or so more minutes. If you have any other questions, is there a specific SOCIS email you'd like to give out? There's junior-year. Sorry, no, what was it? junior-rep@socis.ca.
Yeah, or vp-internal@socis.ca,
Yeah,
or message us on Slack or Facebook. Yeah. We're more than happy to help you and help guide you. Yeah,
reach out. There's a lot of help available in these courses. So yeah, we mentioned junior-rep@socis.ca, senior-rep@socis.ca. That's me. We got
vp-internal@socis.ca.
That's Siraj. If you have any questions, or just anyone, friends, colleagues that have taken this course before, they all know it. They've all been through it. So ask if you have any questions. Don't be afraid for this course. This course is not as difficult as it comes out to be. It all comes down to the things we talked about. If you do these things that you've talked about, then you'll succeed.
So the first question is, how much are assignments worth in total? They'll be worth 50% of your total mark. And it might differ slightly based on the prof, but each assignment's worth about 11.5%. So that's 4 assignments. And you have assignment 0, which is building a data structure. That's new for the fall semester, and that's worth 4%.
Yeah, I didn't have that in my semester. So things differ a little bit each semester. That's why we're trying to not be too specific on the exact outline. You will get that right at the start of the course.
Yeah.
Is using the SOCIS VM equivalent to connecting the Linux servers for testing. Depends. Most of them, yes. I know that. I don't know which one, but there was one, I believe, in circulation that was not a SOCIS provisioned VM. But using the servers or using the machines that you have in the labs at Thorn are the equivalent.
And we've included links in the description on how to access them, but you should be good using the SOCS virtual machine. Yeah,
you'll also be given them in the beginning of the course, I'm pretty sure. And if you're not, ask the prof. They'll provide them for you. So you'll be given them.
How much are the final and midterm worth? I believe the final was worth 30% and the two midterms were worth 10 each. Like, this will depend on what the prof says.
I think mine is a little bit different when we took it last winter. I don't remember off the top of my head. I remember the final was worth more than the midterm. Not by much though. So it ended up being, I think did we have 1 midterm or 2? I don't remember. But they're not a giant weight. They're more so split with the exam a little bit more than the 2 midterms make up. If you do bad in an assignment, how can you figure out if your fixed version would have gotten full marks? So this one's an easy one. After the assignments are graded, about?
Oh, we can't tell them about so that is a question for the prof. We can't really comment too much about that.
I can talk about my own personal experience, and it depends. It depends really on your prof. A lot of it depends on how the prof runs the course. In past, you would have to use your test harness that you've made along the way, and you'd be given feedback, or you go to the TAs and ask questions about why you lost some marks and work those out. I know that in past years they provided a sample set of the full test harness that they've used for you to test your code. If you lost some marks, that might have helped you regain some marks.
Yeah. They may or may not do this. That's based on the prof's discretion, so we can't tell you definitively if they're going to give you one or not.
Can you talk about useful tool for debugging memory leak again?
Yes.
So, by the way, although this is a live stream, we are saving it, so you can go back and re-listen to us talking here if you'd like. Our voice sound great, I know. But if you'd like to go back and listen to it again, you can, but we'll cover them again if you like.
Yep. Also, with the debug and memory leak tools, we've included links in the description. The tool for memory leaks is Valgrind. You can take a look at the links and learn it, test it on your previous code, make sure everything none of your previous codes from 2520 or 2500 have any memory leaks. As for the debugger, it's called GDB. We have resources for that too in the description. Take a look at them, practice them, try it out. Yeah.
Yeah, so the VM from 2500, I think that's what I heard about before. So I'm pretty sure that don't quote me on this. Double check with your prof. They'll tell you exactly which one it is. I know prof provided us with an ISO or a VM for testing, and then in the first week they showed us how to set that up again. So there's always that. But I know that they had a VM set up in Thorn Labs. That might be the correct version, but I personally just tested on the server. It's not hard to test. You know, you just forward it onto there. You SSH. It's really, really simple. Get yourself a tool like Putty, which you might have used already, or something called mremote ng, which is what I use. I can write it in the comment here, but if you guys are interested. But, yeah.
So should we know both Valgrind and GDB? So you should know Valgrind for sure really well. GDB is a bit more optional, and it's a nice to know, but you don't need to know it. But you need to know Valgrind.
What my comment was before about GDB is that yes, you do have your IDEs on your machine, and they are trustworthy, and they do the job. They get the job done. They help you test. But there are cases where, and you'll notice this, you might have noticed this already in the past. I know I did in 2500. Was that I had something running on my Windows machine and it all worked well, and then I handed it in, and then I noticed my mark was a lot lower than what it was supposed to be. And when I ran on the Linux machine, it didn't run the same way. So these GDB tools are meant for Linux, are meant for debugging on the Linux operating system. There are differences between each operating system and how it handles memory and how it handles data. So if you want a safe bet, use GDB. If you want to do some earlier testing as you go, it's a little bit easier to manage. Use your IDE, use your debugging tool in your IDE, whichever IDE you use, and then test before you submit using GDB.
Yep.
Yeah, for GDB on Mac and Valgrind, I'm pretty sure there was. I had a friend who managed to get it working. There was something that he had to install. I can't speak for that, but you can always run it on your on the Linux SSH on the Linux server. It's a lot easier generally than the VM, but if you're insistent on using the VM, use Git. There you go. Don't email. Use Git and clone your repo on your VM. Test it every so often there. But SSHing into the VM usually works just fine. Into the server. Sorry. Is there anything that we missed?
No, I think we covered everything. Do you guys have any final questions?
Yeah, so in terms of basic IDs, you have your Atom, you have your Emacs, you have your Vim, all very powerful tools if you want to use them, if you want to learn them and use them. There are books and tutorials out there. And I know that your Vim might seem pretty basic, but it's actually a very powerful editor. Doesn't have a debugger tool in it, though. There are plugins for that. But if you're looking for something for your Mac or Windows, what do you recommend, Suraj?
So I personally use CLion, and I'll add a link to that.
I was just going to mention CLion, yeah.
Yeah, that's personally what I found to be the most useful, but and it's not too difficult to set up on Windows, and
it's free for students. Yeah. There are some other IDs out there that it all comes down to preference. I use there's one called Code Blocks, you might know. It's a little bit more buggy, so recommended if you have some time to work out the kinks. Another good one that I've used before and I'm currently using is called Visual Studio Code. It's a free Visual Studio software, and it's very reliable. I've been using it for a long time now. So
yeah, so we'll add a few links to IDEs in the description after this live stream's over. Would we be given any pre-made unit testing for the assignments? We can't really speak to that. That's up to the professor's discretion.
Yeah, so it depends on the prof.
Yeah.
I know that when I did it, we weren't given any specific. We were given a few, not necessarily test cases, but a few sample data. Most of it was on us to make our own. And that's where, your design comes into play and your method for testing. So yeah, you might be given a few, you might not, but at the end of the day, you don't really need your own test cases given to you. You can make your own.
What's the fail rate? We don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Generally, like, it's hard to tell with these kind of courses. A lot of it comes down to your personal work ethics. If you're a type of person who can sit down, do the work, do it early, you will succeed. You will do well in this course. There's no doubt about that. And especially if the prof sees this. A lot of these profs, they're out there to help you. If they see that you're struggling, they will help you. They might give you an extension. They might provide some feedback. They might take the time to help you out, right? So it depends on the prof and depends on you, really. So it's all up to you. It's all in your hands, right?
Yep.
Any other questions, guys? Yeah, if you have any more questions, comment them down below. We might come back here and answer them. Not officially named Angel of Death, by the way. Systems integration,
software systems
integration
and development.
Yeah, that's the name. Yeah, not sure as to where that name came from originally, but
yeah,
it's part of the myth. But yeah, if you comment down below, we might be able to see. We might come back here and answer your questions. We have a SOCIS Facebook page. Join, ask your questions there. We have a Slack. Is that in the links there? In the description?
I'll add it to
the description. We have a Slack on there. You'll find a lot of very helpful channels on there, both for meeting alum, professors, current students, throwing back ideas. Please don't share your code on there. And there's forums dedicated for C help. I think there's also a channel for 2750 help, but I'm not sure about that.
I'm not. Yeah.
You can start a channel for that, right? There's a lot of people who are constantly on there. I know professors who are on there all day, and they're just available to help if you need it.
Yeah.
So feel free to reach out. All right, guys.
Yep, I think that'll conclude it. Thank you for watching.
Thank you for listening, guys. All right.
Take care. Good luck,
guys. Yeah. Happy holidays.